Hi everybody, and welcome to today's online session where we'll be looking at how to crowdfund for sport and in association with Sport Wales as well. So we'll be looking at the extra funding available from our Sport Wales funding partner. We're just allowing a few more people to enter the room before we get started. I can see the numbers going up there a little bit. Just make sure people are pressing play, obviously, to getting access to the room. I just want to go through a few housekeeping points as well before we get started. So I'm Zoe, and I'm part of the team here at Crowdfunder. Some of us are still working from home. I'm actually in the offices today, but it is a shared office, so you will still possibly hear some unexpected interruptions. Please bear with us if that does happen. If there's any internet issues, so if you find that the internet is dropping out, maybe the screen freezes, please do just press the refresh button in your browser and you should come straight back into the live room. We often get asked if we can see you. We can't, essentially. We are just talking to a computer screen. You can obviously see us. We cannot see you. So please do feel free to sit there with your cup of tea. If you would like to ask us any questions, however, you can pop them into the chat box, which is on the right hand of your screen. We love to make these sessions as interactive as possible. So if you do have any questions about crowdfunding or the Sport Wales Fund itself, then please do pop them into the chat box and we'll try and get through as many of those as we can throughout the session. We'll have a bit of time at the end for a Q&A. We've also been joined as well by Carly, who has just recently crowdfunded and been supported by Sport Wales. So we'll hear all about her amazing crowdfunding journey, and she'll be able to impart some of those kind of hints and tips as well, because she's had such a brilliant kind of experience. So hopefully you'll come away from this feeling really confident to start your crowdfunding journey. Okay, so without further ado, sorry, I'm tripping over my own words, let's get started. So if I could bring onto the screen Owen, please. Hi, Owen, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Zoe.
Good. So you're going to talk us through the funds available from Sport Wales, aren't you? So we've got one fund that we're currently rolling out through Crowdfunder, and that's a place for sport. So if you could just go into a bit of detail about what's available, please.
Yeah, sure. So at Sport Wales, we've got two funds generally for community investments. One is our Be Active Wales Fund, which we use for lottery funding. And that essentially funds all those things that help sport take place, really. Be that coach education, floodlights, equipment, venue hire, all the things that clubs need to actually allow people to participate in sport. We recognised about a year ago when we started our partnership with Crowdfunder that there was something missing in terms of our support, that off-field, off-court, call it what you will, investment that allows everything around sport to be facilitated. So we launched this fund. It's £300,000 for the initial pilot, and we've committed that again for this coming 12 months. And the sort of things we're looking at is anything that helps make clubs more financially sustainable, makes them more environmentally sustainable, or helps the experience of participants and parents and those involved in the club outside of actual participation. In terms of the fund itself, we'll match fund up to £15,000 for any project, and it's on a sliding scale. So it's 30% if your project's eligible. So essentially, if you come in for something that's eligible, for example, changing room renovation, we'll fund up to 30% of that project as part of a crowdfunding approach. If that project targets inequalities, so if, for example, that changing room renovation allows more participation for women and girls, or it helps disability access, for example, then we'll fund up to 40%. And then ultimately, because we want to drive this funding to those most in need areas, we use the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, and we take the postcode data. And if any club or organisation that applies is in the lowest 20% most deprived areas in Wales, then we'll fund automatically 50% of that project. And you as a club coming in don't need to know that detail. You just need to give us your details and we'll do the rest in terms of recognising that. It's 20% currently. We're in a pilot phase, so we are looking at that, whether we expand the actual areas we're going to fund that 50%, but currently it's 20%. And as I say, we are funding based on the experience. So the experience, environmental sustainability and financial sustainability. So some of the things that we might have people come in for would be changing room renovations, improved kitchen facilities to gain more income, solar paneling to try to reduce energy costs, lifts and ramps for disability access. Some of those big things, but also some smaller things as well. We've had people come in for £1,000 crowdfunder around just small storage spaces or video equipment. So there's a whole range of things. Essentially anything that doesn't directly deliver sport is on the table for us. And one of the things we've really recognised, and you will speak to it as with one of the projects that's been successful, is this is a different type of approach. You're not necessarily applying to Sport Wales for funding, you're applying to your community. And the big shift for us through the crowdfunded approach and a place to sport, rather than some of our other funding mechanisms, is this is about how we work with a project from the moment they come into us to get them over the line in terms of that community investment and that investment from Sport Wales.
Perfect, thanks, Owen. And you touched on it towards the end there, that actually our kind of sport funding partners, so obviously yourselves included in that, are really hands-on at making sure that these projects can be successful. So I would suggest that anybody that is applying, don't be put off if you need to make improvements or it opens up a conversation with Sport Wales. Make sure you're putting in those applications quite early and allowing time for any kind of improvements and amendments to the campaign to make sure you do get approved. But you're very open to having those conversations with projects, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I think we really welcome it. We've had some projects come in and they've already got a brilliant page and videos and pictures, and they're really on it when it comes to crowdfunding. But we've had people come in with, almost, no idea. And this is a brand new fund. So it's an innovative change in Wales. So we wouldn't expect people to be experts in crowdfunding. They tell us what they are trying to crowdfund for and a little bit of a blurb. And we've worked with them really early. If we go back to them and tell them we're not going to support them because of their page, that's the start of the conversation. It is that they're eligible and we want to work with them, not to make it better for Sport Wales, actually. It's because of our experience, and the experience of working with you tells us that we know some of the changes we can work with them to adapt is going to make it a more successful campaign and see people not just reach their funding targets, but far and away outstrip them. So it's part of a process. We had invested in these crowdfunding pages. I feel really part of the campaigns on some of these applications, and it's been, I'm as committed to getting them supported as they as clubs have been. It's been a real sea change in our approach. And I've got to say that the team at Sport Wales have really bought into that, and they've worked hand in glove with clubs, and it's been a really learning process for us as well. So if anyone comes in, don't worry about our lack of confidence. We'll help you get to that stage, and Crowdfunder are brilliant as an organisation to get them to that stage as well. And certainly those who've been successful, we see them go on to think about other crowdfunding projects because of the learned experience, and they might not need our support in future, but it's definitely there for anyone who does need it.
Perfect, thank you. I will just mention, I kind of missed that off with my introduction, that I will be sharing links throughout the course of the webinar into the chat box. So I've just put one about the fund whilst you were speaking there, Owen. So if anyone wants to click on that link, you'll be taken straight to have a look at the fund details itself. There are also lots of kind of national and regional funds available through our extra funding page of our website. So if you find that when you're setting up your page, you've also been matched with any additional funding partners, it's always a good idea to have a look at their eligibility criteria as well, because you can apply for multiple funds. We see that there's quite a crossover between sport and some of our other funding partners, whether that's local authorities or national funders such as National Emergencies Trust. So always check those funds that you've been matched with as well, is always a good idea. There will also be a replay to this session that will be sent round as part of a follow-up email, so you'll be able to rewatch all of these slides. Just to give people a bit of an idea of how the extra funding works when it comes to putting in those applications, you would ideally put that application in your temp stage, so before going live. That's always the best time to put in any application. At that point, as Owen mentioned, it would start that conversation between yourselves and Sport Wales and, of course, Crowdfunder, to make sure that you have got everything you need on that page to be approved, essentially. Once you have been approved, you would launch your project and you'd start crowdfunding. There will be pledge criteria in place to release the money from Sport Wales. So you would need to crowdfund to raise money from your own audience or your own crowd. You'd need to raise 25% of your initial target. You'd need to do that with a required amount of supporters. And you can see in the table just below here, depending on what your target is, will depend on how many unique supporters you need to actually release that pledge. When we talk about unique supporters, we're talking about people with an individual email address and a unique banking footprint. So, for example, if a couple have a shared joint bank account, then that will class as one supporter. So just make sure that you're getting the word out to your community that you need as many unique supporters as possible. Once you've hit that 25% initial raise with the required supporters, your extra funding pledge will be released onto your page. You then continue to crowdfund. The extra funding pledge will go towards your target. It will appear on your page in your target, and Sport Wales will become one of your supporters. You then keep crowdfunding till you reach 100% of your target in order to secure that money from Sport Wales. Once you've reached 100% of your target, you don't need to stop crowdfunding or raising money. If you still have some time live on your campaign, you can continue to raise funds, and that is part of a stretch target. We allow you the option to set a stretch target, which essentially allows you to overfund above your target. All of this information can be found within our resources and our learn guides. Again, I'll put links to that. But I think the next thing to do, which would be really beneficial for you all, is actually to take a little look at how to crowdfund successfully for sport.
Hello everyone. So how does crowdfunding work?
Hello everyone.
And what is it?
How does crowdfunding
work? Crowdfunding is a great way to raise money and awareness
for your organisation by engaging with your community.
What you're going to do is create a crowdfunding page on our online platform. And don't worry if you're not too tech savvy, it's very easy to use, very user friendly. You're going to create a page that looks something like this one on the right hand side, and then you're going to promote that campaign to your crowd and your community, and they'll then make pledges and donations on your page, and that's how you get funded. So it's really important to make an engaging page. It needs to target the whole community, so try not to fall into that trap of just writing something that's geared towards your club members. They're most likely going to be engaging with you already, so you really want to reach out to the wider audience, potentially people who aren't already connected to your sport or your club, and really make the most of crowdfunding and create that awareness of your organisation. So when you're creating your page, what we always recommend is start with some key headlines and organise the content into a very readable order. So if you start with the headline of who you are and outline who you are as a club, your impact in the community, and why you're crowdfunding. So for a lot of you, it will still be the effects of that COVID has had on your organisation, but equally some people are now starting to get over that, and maybe a completely different type of project. So it's important that you just explain what you're actually crowdfunding for, and also how you plan to spend the money. So as a potential supporter, you would be much more likely to pledge or donate to a campaign if you can see the direct impact that your financial contribution will make. Once you have all that information collated, it's time to make your page just look more engaging, more appealing. And the best way to do that is with images and videos. So you can add images in between to the page, in between the text, to break up those blocks of text that you should have, and it also helps to summarise and reflect the key elements of your campaign and show the personality of your club. So what also helps with that, as well as images, is a short video. So 1 to 2 minutes is absolutely plenty. You just want to grab the audience's attention and tell them in a nutshell what your project is all about. And it gives that opportunity to actually connect and engage with the viewers of your page. So it's really important to make sure that you're happy with your page before you go live, but also before applying for the extra funding. So whenever you apply for your extra funding, which you'll do via your project dashboard, the relevant sports organisation will review your page and give you some feedback potentially, and just make sure your page has got everything on it that it needs to be a successful campaign, and before deciding whether to give you a pledge for extra funding or not. Now, Crowdfunder is the UK's top rewards-based crowdfunding platform, as opposed to just purely donations only. So, and really, it's on top of the standard donation that you'd perhaps obviously associate with traditional fundraising. You add these rewards to take your campaign to the next level. So rewards tend to encourage larger and more pledges and enable you to attract pledges from outside your network. So you want to get really inventive and creative with your rewards as much as you can. So try to offer a range of rewards targeted at different audiences. So your members might be tempted by, say, a one-to-one coaching session, or you could offer sponsorship or advertising space to large donors. And then you want to think about those in the wider community who don't necessarily have a connection with your club already, but you want to think about how you can get them to pledge. So what you can do is speak with local businesses who may want to support your campaign. Rather than a financial contribution, or in some cases as well as, they can offer products or services to use as rewards. And offering these at a slight discount means that anyone in the area will be keen to make a pledge to grab themselves a bargain, an exclusive offer. So on the page here, you can see we've got some great examples of rewards that we've seen, such as on the right-hand side there, we've got 2 hours of conversational Greek lessons. In the middle at the bottom, we've got a fish and chips voucher. And then up at the top left, we've got Power Auto's MOT voucher. So you can see there's a bit of things that are totally unrelated to sport, but that is making it appealing much to a much wider audience. Now, another great thing that you can do with a sports crowdfunding campaign is to use our multiplier feature. It's really effective for sports clubs. It allows people to essentially fundraise on behalf of your project. So perhaps you might have some individuals that want to do something special to raise funds for the club, like a sponsored swim or run a marathon. Or perhaps you have different teams or squads within your club who fancy a bit of competition to see who can raise the most or cycle the furthest or run the furthest. It's a great way to get more people involved in promoting the campaign and tapping into their personal networks, so reaching an even wider audience, and it can add a great competitive element to a campaign too. So you can see this example on the screen now was run by Spencer Lacrosse Club in 2021, and they had 44 fundraisers, so 44 individuals, each with their own fundraising page, and all the money that they raise via there feeds into the main project page. So it's a really great way to get people truly engaged with your fundraising efforts. So crowdfunding works and sports go really hand in hand very well. Sports crowdfund really well. So you can see here there's a selection of different types of projects, and that's just a very small handful. So they range from speed skating to swimming to gymnastics. Sports clubs are often at the heart of the community, and by definition you have a group of potentially competitive people who directly benefit from the project. So whatever sport it might be, it crowdfunds really well, and you really want to have that common goal in mind, and all crowdfund together. One of the next steps you can take, the most important steps, is to use our online learning facility. So we've got a free online course specifically geared for crowdfunding sports clubs, and that will give you even more detail behind the basics that I've just gone over now, telling you how to create the perfect page. There's lots of tips on how to actually run your crowdfunder and pull it together. So definitely go on and do that online learning course after this webinar, and then go on to help create your perfect page and apply for the funding. So best of luck to you all.
Okay, so hopefully all of you have got a bit of a better idea about the actual process of crowdfunding. I'm just going to bring on, I'm just messing around with slides here for 1 second to get us back to the next spot. I'd love to welcome on Carly, who recently crowdfunded for her project, which was the coffee bean, and that is part of the Y Galaxy Gymnastics. So Carly, are you there?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am good, thank you. I'm going to make us a little bit big. That's better. We've been tiny in the corner there. So you had a really successful crowdfunder, and you're obviously supported by Sport Wales as well. And we can see here, just looking at the numbers, that you successfully raised just over £10,500 from 179 supporters, which is great to see you kind of reaching out to all of those different members of community, and obviously them getting behind you, which is really, really lovely to see. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your project? And I'll share a link to your project page into the chat box for people to take a look at.
Of course, yeah. So it's always been one of our goals as a club to introduce a sort of cafe area. We've always been quite restricted with space. So that's not something that we've been able to do to date. But back in November, we were gifted a porta cabin from a local company, which sort of resolved all the issues we had with regard to space, but it was in quite a bit of disrepair. So it needs quite a bit of work. So which is why we came up with the idea to crowdfund to the refurbishment project.
Brilliant. And so what kind of drew you to crowdfunding? Had you heard of it before, or was it that you knew about the kind of importance of getting that community involved with what you wanted to do?
So we'd previously seen it advertised, the partnership between Sport Wales and Crowdfunder. We've seen that advertised from Sport Wales on social media and via their monthly newsletters, etc. So when we were gifted the porta cabin, it was kind of like a light bulb moment. Like, oh my God, this project would be perfect for that partnership. So yeah, we did a bit of reading and looked into it, and it turned out really well.
Amazing. And what did you find kind of difficult about the process or easy about the process? Were there any hurdles along the way that you've kind of learnt from now, or you wish you'd done slightly differently, or anything that was just a massive success?
The process of setting up the crowdfunder was so incredibly easy. The only difficulty we've had really is applying for gift aid following the closure of the fund. So, but that's a whole different matter. But I think what I would probably do differently if we do crowdfund again this time is given ourselves a little bit more time. We gave ourselves a really tight deadline of only 4 weeks to raise £10,000. So we would probably give us a little bit more time and be able to stretch that target even further. But yeah, the process was incredibly easy.
That's really good to hear. And you touched upon two really important things there, actually. So we do allow projects to kind of accrue gift aid. So we allow people the kind of option to collect gift aid throughout the course of their live campaign. But when it comes to actually being, going through the process of drawing that gift aid down, it is through HMRC, isn't it, kind of post crowdfunder. So we give you all of the information that you would need to then approach HMRC and actually draw down that money. But we do allow you the ability to actually collect it throughout the course of the crowdfunder. Collect isn't the right word. You collect it from HMRC, but hopefully that is made clear with what I'm saying. And the other thing is that time frame. So we often recommend that you spend as much time planning as you do running a crowdfunder. So around 4 to 5 weeks is kind of the sweet spot, depending on obviously the amount of money you're trying to raise. What we say as well is that crowdfunding can take a bit of a U shape. So there's always a lull in the middle. Everyone gets really excited about the launch of it. Then it kind of tails off a little bit and you get a bit of radio silence, don't you, from your supporters?
Absolutely. So you start panicking a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then it all ramps up towards the end because people can see the finish line. So it's a good idea to, if you can, run your live crowdfunder over 2 paydays, because it means that people have got 2 chances to possibly have a bit of disposable income. I know it's not that common these days, but what you want to kind of shy away from is having a really long crowdfunder unless you've got some really good activity going on, like events, for example, throughout the course of that, because what you might see is just that lull in the middle is extended, because people like that sense of urgency. They'll maybe put off donating until they see that they actually need to. So yeah, for you guys, maybe a little bit of a longer one, but ultimately I think kind of 4 to 5 weeks is a good shout. What worked the best for you guys?
First of all, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to, I think you have to raise 20% of your total figure before your funder, actually that amount from the funder hits the account as well.
So it's 25% with the sport ones. Yeah, 25.
So as soon as we hit that 25%, the additional money going in from Sport Wales really give a sort of viability to the project, which then did a massive bump again. So people are like, oh, there's a real, they're definitely going to hit their target. Like they were much more willing to donate. So that going in sort of relatively early works so well to give, real viability and real sort of meat on the bones of your project. So that's really good.
Yeah, definitely.
And we also had some really nice rewards that we were able to offer. And that helped as well, sort of get people who wouldn't ordinarily come to the club excited about the project as well, and sort of bringing in sort of a different aspect.
That's really, really key. And like we mentioned when I was speaking with Owen, it's important to either put in that application in that kind of temp stage before you go live, or at least within the really early stages of going live, because it does provide that kind of fuel and that momentum, doesn't it? And it gives you something to shout about and celebrate. And as you quite rightly said, once you can say we've been approved by Sport Wales, all of a sudden it ramps up that momentum from your supporters, and they can see it being credible, and they're going to want to get you over the line. Yeah. One thing we recommend as well is when you do launch your crowdfunder, you are launching it with a certain amount of money on there already, because success breeds success. So when you know you've got a go live date, make sure you have spoken to your kind of close friends and family, maybe those kind of club members that you can guarantee their support, and get them to pledge on the first couple of days before you go shouting about it on social media. Because actually, if you're shouting about a crowdfunder which has already raised kind of 10 to 20%, ideally, you're already a success story, and people are going to think, well, we can really help them to get to their target, as opposed to they've not raised anything yet, we're not sure if this is completely valid. So just make sure you're thinking about securing some money early on, and again from Sport England early on. You mentioned there the rewards. Did you think about, was it a deliberate move to think about your community when you were doing that? Because a lot of them are kind of club focused in the sense that you're offering like lovely like kids meals and stuff for, throughout the year, where people can come in and they can, do gymnastics, they can have a bit of food, they can do all these things. Did you kind of sit down and go, how are we going to bring people from outside our club and the community into this space, because that's what we want to be able to provide? Or did you get feedback from the community? How did you go about sourcing those?
It's always been the sort of the goal of the cafe is not just to sort of service our current members. It is about becoming a sort of hub for the local community. We have got lots of various different projects where we're quite sort of involved in the local community and trying to sort of stretch our reach a bit more. So that's always been on our radar. We also run a community fridge as well, so that was always there. But it was a sort of move to think about how we are going to be able to get funding, not just from our members, but from the community, sort of from the larger part of the community. So we did try to pick rewards that would be open to people that wouldn't ordinarily visit us, which will then in turn bring additional customers to the club as well. So just to increase revenue in the future. So yeah, that was very much a thought process.
I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head there. Like, you've done so well with it all, and it's going to have such a wide appeal and longevity as well. It's something that you'll be kind of, as you say, a community hub going forward, which is really lovely. Just to kind of finish off, did you find that there was any additional benefits to crowdfunding other than just the financial raise? And what bits of advice would you give to people who might be here thinking of crowdfunding?
Yeah, the benefits have been huge. I mean, not only did it so put a spotlight on our club, it was being shared a lot on the local community Facebook groups, etc. Local businesses have reached out, so they might not necessarily have donated, but they've reached out to us and offered services in kind. So we have a local electrical company supplying all the electrical fittings. We've got a local kitchen and bathroom store supplying all the worktops. So it really developed a sense of community within the sort of like outside our normal community. So yeah, that was something that was not expected, but really lovely to see. And then any advice, really, I would just say to have a really good plan about how you're going to advertise, how to keep momentum up. Crowdfunder offer loads and loads of like social media banners, loads of things that you can use with them, but just really be specific about your plan about how to continue to advertise and let everyone know about your project.
really, really good advice. That's me with a little bit of country advice. It's all about the planning, and that way you can be reactive to, you know, what's happening throughout your campaign. If you know you've got a plan in place, you can always tweak it once you've gone live, but ultimately planning is what makes a successful campaign. I've just shared into the chat box just a few little things that we've spoken about where to find resources. So there's a page about the fees, the Knowledge Hub, which is a really brilliant new kind of addition to our resources package that we have on offer. Loads of brilliant resources in there, and that social media hub that you've kind of mentioned there, Carly, where you can get access to all the different graphics and things that you can use within your social media campaigns. I'm conscious of time. We've just gone past the half hour, so we'll try and fly through some of these questions that have come through. If I could please ask Owen to come back and join us. Are you happy to stay on as well, Carly, just to see if we've got any questions that might be for your project?
Of course.
Right. I will start at the beginning. So, okay, this is from Jason, just asking about forms. Is it a case of filling in a form and being advised of any issues and not just rejecting the application? So, Owen, this is for you really. If somebody's not very confident with kind of form filling and answering the questions in a way that to get the kind of idea across, is that something where you'll be able to work with people and open up that conversation and try and get a real idea of the project?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the beauties of crowdfunding, is that we're not really assessing a form. People start a crowdfunding page and we're assessing the page itself. And once it's eligible, we're almost not assessing the page in terms of the information we need. We're assessing it in terms of, is this something that's going to appeal to the community? Does it have the right level of rewards, pictures, etc.? But what we will do is give feedback to that extent. So we'll give advice to what they can do to improve the page. You know, very rarely will we reject the page. We'll give them the advice to get them to the point that then we can confirm we're going to support it once it's eligible. If we do, however, reject it, and it has been the case with some clubs, it's a rejection based on this is what you need to go and to alter. And those clubs have come back to us in a week or two and said, we've added these rewards, we've reassessed it, and they've gone ahead. But certainly it's a case of, if they set the page up, we'll give them the advice they need to get to that point, rather than it being you need to hit certain threshold before we decide if it's good enough or not. It's very much we want to work with you on this, rather than you need to prove to us it's the right thing to do.
Perfect, thank you. Question come through from Carol. Is this for adults in sport or adolescents in sport, or is there separate applications for adults and one for adolescents? Okay, so in terms of crowdfunding, you do need to be 18 or over to set up a crowdfunding page. That's not to say that your project couldn't be working with adolescents or young people. That's absolutely fine. But when it comes to the setting up of the page, that would need to be done by somebody who's over 18. Could be done on behalf of an adolescent, but you do need to make sure that the person actually setting it up and verifying their ID and their bank details and everything are over 18. In terms of the fund itself, it comes down to whether your project is eligible for that criteria with Sport Wales. It could be that you're working with adolescents within your club. It's really going to come down to an individual project, isn't it, Owen?
Yeah, so you're right, you obviously need to be over 18 to set up the page, but in terms of the focus of what you're crowdfunding for, you know, as long as it's a sports club or organization and it's not for profit, then we will look at it. It doesn't matter if it's for children, Carly's got a club here that delivers gymnastics for all sorts of age ranges, from children right up to adults. So, the focus of it doesn't really matter as long as the project is eligible in terms of what we're trying to support.
Brilliant, thank you. And this has come in from Annika. Could this funding be used for a new roof or roof repairs on a clubhouse?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. Very short answer, but to the point. I love it. And this is from Sean. We've been awarded £5,000 from another source, but need to raise the shortfall. Is this possible?
Yeah, so I guess you crowdfund for what you need. So if there was a £10,000 project, but they've already secured £5,000 elsewhere, then they'd come in for £5,000. That's their target, and obviously we'll fund 30, 40 or 50% of that target based on the sort of where that club is based and the purposes of the fund. But for example, if they were in the lowest 20%, so we were going to fund 50% of the target, then their target would be £5,000. We are going to give them £2,500 so long as they reach the other £2,500. But essentially just take that 5k off what you need and come into crowdfund for what actually is the required amount for the project.
Yeah, perfect. And another thing to bear in mind is just to be as transparent as you can on your page as well. It's always good to kind of let people know what the overall plan is. And if you've received money from elsewhere, it's great to pop that on the crowdfunding page so everyone's in the loop with what's going on and your supporters get a really clear idea of how this project is going to come to fruition as well. This is a question in from Janet. Would it fund a minibus?
Yeah, I think it need to demonstrate why that was needed in terms of either the experience or environmental or financial sustainability. It might, if it's, for example, that currently the club has got a load of people driving individually to an area, and actually having one minibus reduces general costs or environmental issues, then yes, I can see why it would be funded. So certainly it's something that could be eligible. There might be some issues around MOT, insurance, etc. we can discuss, but in principle, I don't see why not.
Okay, perfect. I'm just marking through these as chats now. Okay. Ooh, Janet, so how do we go about it? So I think really it's going through the process of obviously being here today, signing up for the Learn course. And once you've worked your way through that, it would be having a look at, well, at the same time, having a look at that eligibility criteria on the extra funding page for Sport Wales. And if you are definitely, you know, eligible, then it's making a start on that crowdfunding campaign and putting an application through. So when you're actually setting up your page, you have a whole section on extra funding. And as long as you pop in your postcode and who are going to benefit from your project and the possible outcomes within that section, you will then be matched with any funders where we think you could be eligible. And at that point, you can put in the applications before you go live and open those conversations. Okay, next question in from Deb. We've been fortunate to obtain a community award towards our project, which will be paid into our club's bank account. Can we add it to our crowdfunder? Yes, you absolutely can. You can pay into your own crowdfunders from your organisation. What we often find is people are having offline events, for example. They might host game nights or raffles or something in the club, and they would then pay the money onto their crowdfunder. The things that you would really ideally do in this instance is you would make sure that when you're paying that money in, you leave a comment to say where the money has come from, and also post an update to your page, which is a function we allow you to do. They appear on your page, and they're also sent out to your supporters that have agreed that they want to receive them. And you can put in your update, you know, that we held this brilliant game night last week. We've raised X amount of money, all towards the crowdfunder. You do need to make sure that you have some kind of essentially kind of a trail of where that has come from, because obviously if you're in receipt of any extra funding, you may well find that Sport Wales would like to just look into where these donations from the club are coming from. So make sure that you've got kind of that paper trail or receipts or emails, whatever it might be, to just show where that money has come from, whether it's an outside donor or an event. Would you agree with that one, Owen?
Yeah, just to say, generally we wouldn't allow a club just to top up their funding target because they're short by a couple of £1,000. But if it's because they've raised that money elsewhere or they've fundraised, as you said, then obviously that's a bit of a different circumstances. So I would encourage clubs just to keep that audit trail to evidence to us, and then there's a different conversation to be had.
Cool. Thank you. Question from Alan. How do potential supporters donate if they're not on Facebook? Okay, so we talk about Facebook and social media as a great tool for promotion, but people donate via your crowdfunding page. So it's up to you how you put that word out. If you know that you don't have a massive social media following, but actually you hold in-person events where you're going to reach a huge audience, or you have a website and a newsletter and all these different ways of connecting with people, you ultimately share your link to your crowdfunding page and they donate via your crowdfunder. So the promotion side of things comes down to you and how you can find your audience and the best way to connect with them. They don't have to be on Facebook to donate, but they do need to be able to donate via the crowdfunding site using a credit or a debit card. Okay. From Carol, what if the group is not on social media? So just touched upon that. It doesn't have to be promoted through social media. It definitely has more chances of being successful if it is. One thing we would probably suggest is that you set up some kind of social media accounts for the project and for the club, because actually it's a really great way of continuing to reach people post crowdfunder. It's a great way of sharing information and building up kind of advocates and supporters generally for your organisation. So that would be something to bear in mind, is actually to think about setting up those social media accounts for your club and for the crowdfunder going forward. Okay, so just a couple more. One from Lisa here. Where would I go for funding that directly delivers sport, relying 2 times MUGA courts?
So I think that means mugger court. It's just a type of
it's beyond me. I don't know what a mugger court is. What's a mugger court, Owen?
Well, it's the kind of sort of facility that you would do. Well, I don't want to go into it because I'll get it wrong, but the investments team know all about it. They tell me about it all the time. Essentially, if you're coming to Sport Wales for funding directly for delivering participation in sport, then we've got the Be Active Wales Fund, which again, on our website, you'll find all the details of our fund. So that covers the direct delivery of sport, and you can apply for a range of different things there. I obviously can't say if that individual will be successful or not, depends on the nature of the application. But in terms of things that directly deliver sport, that Be Active Wales Fund is the fund for that process.
Okay, this one from Carol, just flipping between the two here. If you've already received funding from Sports Wales, will this enhance your application? Not necessarily. It does depend on the project, doesn't it? Would you explain a little bit about past recipients of Sport Wales money?
Well, it depends if they've already received it through Crowdfunder. So if you've received it through Crowdfunder and you've run a successful campaign, then you're more than welcome to come back in through Crowdfunder. We don't preclude people coming in for more than one time, but obviously just one crowdfunder at a time. In terms of our other fund, the Be Active Wales Fund is only available for applications once a year. But once you do come in for that, you can also come in for crowdfunder at the same. You can come in for both Be Active Wales and crowdfunder within the year, but we don't allow people to have both applications open at the same time. In theory, a crowdfunder application wouldn't be open for more than sort of 5 or 6 weeks. So despite the fact that we wouldn't allow you to have a Be Active Wales fund and a crowdfunder open at the same time, it is quite a short window in which you would not be able to have one or the other. But we allow people to come in for multiple Sport Wales funds, but just as long as they're not open at the same time.
That touches upon actually Gary's question at the end there. Does running a crowdfunder preclude you from applying for separate grants or support?
Yes, just to confirm, it doesn't preclude you. It's just so long as they're not open at the same time.
Perfect, thank you. This is from Karen. Would a charitable leisure facility qualify that hosts a number of sports from juniors to over 65s?
It would depend on the nature of the fund. The nature of the organisation. This is open to all not-for-profit community clubs and organisations. So, yeah, a charity would be eligible to apply. A community trust wouldn't be. Someone who delivers leisure services on behalf of a local authority. So it depends on the nature of the organisation. But if someone wants to follow up with some direct questions around the nature of their organisation, be happy for the investments team to look at that.
Perfect. There's just 2 more to run through very quickly, and I think we'll call it a day at 1:45, because I think we've covered so many questions, which is great, but we could carry on all afternoon, I think. So we'll do these last 2, and then we'll make sure that I put a follow-up email with any of that relevant information in there as well, so you can always go and kind of research the answers to these questions if you need to. So this is a question from Karen. This is a lot of work. There are organisations that will set up and manage a crowdfunding page. It can be a lot of work, yes. I'm sure, Carly, you will attest to that. What we recommend from Crowdfunder is that you develop a team of people in order to help you to do it. It's quite a big undertaking for one person. We completely understand that. If you do have a team of club members or volunteers or members of your organisation that you can kind of pull together to make sure that you're tapping into all of their different skill sets as well. So you might have somebody that's really great with social media. Let them do all the social media promotion, for example. Would you agree with that, Carly, to have a few people around you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the setup of the crowdfunder is super simple, super easy, and it can be done sort of relatively quickly. It's just keeping the project alive and in the sort of eye of the public. I would definitely get, I'm quite lucky. I've got a team of employees that were all really supportive and they just got behind it. So yeah, I would certainly, if you're sort of strapped for time, maybe put a project leader in place who then can have a team of people just to, like you said, one to be in charge of social media, one to look at sort of like different activities you can do. So yeah, but I think you will be surprised at how many people will get behind a good project to raise money for your local club. So yeah, just speak to your people involved and get them on board.
Absolutely. And even if it's, friends and family that aren't necessarily connected to the club, if you know that you've got people you can rely on that can help you through the process, absolutely reach out and bring them on board. Last question from Ryan.
Can I just add, sorry, just to add as well that the team at Sport Wales won't be able to run the campaign for you, but they'll be there to support and give some advice. And I know that Crowdfunder offer drop-in sessions and support as well, from coaching support, so that's been invaluable to projects along the way. So there is support from both Crowdfunder and ourselves throughout this process. So it is a big undertaking. It can be a big undertaking. I guess it's a little bit of, it's as difficult and as challenging an undertaking as you want to make it. And the more, it's one of those things, the more you put in, the more you probably get out in terms of that fund. It's an intense period of time, but it is a short period of time. So it's a really good opportunity to take that forward. I think Zoe's dropped off the call briefly there. I don't know if the internet's dropped out. I'll just cover the last question, which is this the best fund for facility hire to support growth in numbers, from Ryan? We wouldn't support that through Crowdfunder, but we would support that potentially through Be Active Wales Fund. We do only support venue hire for new projects and new initiatives. So once almost priming a project, so once they're up and running, then if they were to expand, we kind of expect the clubs and organisations to take that forward, perhaps in conjunction with their governing bodies or local authorities. But in terms of our fund, if there's facility hire that you would be looking for, again, that would be the Be Active Wales Fund that we run, and the details of that is all on our website. So I'm happy to call it there. Obviously, Zoe's dropped off the call. So thanks to everyone for taking the time to join. Thanks particularly to you, Carly, as well. We'll circulate the video for anyone who had signed up and has attended and hasn't, and all the resources, as we say, are available on the Sport Wales and Crowdfunder websites. Thanks all.
Thanks, Owen.